The sky above the Zalari homeworld glowed bright orange as massive explosions lit up the atmosphere. Commander Veltar could feel his home planet dying beneath his feet. His 6 arms moved quickly across the control panel of their most powerful communication device, trying to send one last message into space before it was too late. The Zalari had been fighting the Cthulhu swarm for 3 long years. These terrible creatures were like a plague that spread from world to world, eating everything in their path. They didn't just kill people or destroy buildings. They consumed everything completely, turning entire planets into empty, lifeless rocks floating in space. Veltar's crystalline skin, which normally sparkled like diamonds, now looked dull and tired. His people hadn't slept properly in months. Every day brought news of another world falling to the swarm. Every night, more refugee ships arrived, carrying survivors with haunted eyes and stories of horror. "The message is broadcasting now, sir," said his assistant, a young Zalari named Kixel, whose voice trembled with fear and exhaustion. "Our computers show that 17 different alien civilizations have already received our call for help." Veltar stopped working for a moment and looked at his aide. He already knew what the responses would be, but he had to ask anyway. "What did they say?" Kixel's 4 eyes drooped sadly. "The Galactic Council sent back a formal letter saying they're very sorry, but they cannot risk their own people. The hegemony leaders called our situation hopeless and said we should surrender to reduce suffering. Even the warrior clans from the Rigel system, who are famous for never backing down from any fight, refused to help us. They said the Cthulhu swarm is too dangerous." Through the large windows of their command center, Veltar could see another one of their floating cities crashing into the ground. The city had housed over 2 million Zalari families just that morning. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and smoke. The Cthulhu bioships swarmed around it like hungry insects, absorbing every piece of useful material and energy they could find. These creatures were unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever seen. They weren't just conquerors who wanted land or resources. They were parasites that fed on entire civilizations. Their ships were alive, grown rather than built, and they could adapt to almost any weapon used against them. When you shot them with energy beams, they learned to absorb that energy and use it to make themselves stronger. When you hit them with missiles, they grew thicker armor. It was like fighting an enemy that became more powerful every time you attacked it. The distress beacon continued, sending their message automatically, broadcasting it to every corner of the galaxy. Most alien species barely looked at it. When their computers showed that the signal had reached the outer spiral arm, where dangerous radiation storms and dead planets made travel nearly impossible, they marked it as unimportant and moved on. 2 other business. But far away, on a small blue and green planet, orbiting an ordinary yellow star, something different happened. The planet was listed in galactic databases as a Class 12 death world, a place so hostile and dangerous that no intelligent life should be able to survive there. Most aliens assumed it was empty. They were very wrong. On that distant world, in facilities hidden beneath mountains and deep underground, sensitive listening equipment detected the Zalari distress call. Human technicians, working the night shift at radio telescopes around Earth, suddenly found themselves staring at the most important message in their species' history. General Mike Torres didn't even knock as he rushed into the president's office that Tuesday morning. His uniform was wrinkled, and his eyes were red from staying up all night. Behind him, NASA Director Lisa Carter clutched a thick folder of documents, her face showing a mixture of fear and excitement that the president had never seen before. President Jack Williams was sitting at his desk reading the morning intelligence reports when the 2 officials burst in. He looked up with surprise, setting down his coffee cup. "Mike, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Mr. President," Torres said, catching his breath, "we've just made first contact with an alien civilization. And sir, they're asking for our help because they're about to be completely wiped out." Williams felt his heart skip a beat. Every president since the 1950s had wondered what they would do if this moment ever came. Now it was actually happening, and it wasn't at all what anyone had expected. Carter stepped forward and activated the large screen on the office wall. "Sir, our listening stations picked up this transmission 6 hours ago. Our best computer programs and language experts have been working all night to translate it." The message began to play, and Williams watched in stunned silence. The images were heartbreaking. He saw alien families huddled together in refugee camps, their homes burning in the background. He watched entire cities being destroyed by creatures that looked like something from humanity's worst nightmares. The aliens in the message looked desperate and afraid, just like humans would be in the same situation. "These are the Zelari," Carter explained as the video continued. "They're a peaceful species that's been fighting a losing war against something called the Kithara swarm. These Kithara things are like a plague that travels from planet to planet, eating everything they find." Williams studied the images carefully. "How much time do they have left?" Torres consulted his tablet. "Based on how fast these attacks are happening and the distance between their remaining worlds, we estimate maybe 3 weeks before their entire civilization is destroyed." The president was quiet for a long moment, staring at the screen. Then he did something that surprised both officials. He reached for his secure phone and started making calls. "Get me the Chinese premier," he said to his secretary. "Then I want to talk to the Russian president, the head of the European Space Agency, and every other space-capable nation on Earth." What happened next was something nobody had thought possible. Within just a few hours, countries that had been arguing and fighting with each other for decades suddenly started working together. China immediately offered to share their newest fusion rocket engines, technology they had been keeping secret for years. Russia said they would provide their entire military space fleet. Japan contributed their advanced computer systems. Even small countries offered whatever they could. The European Space Agency had the biggest cargo ships, designed for carrying supplies to Mars colonies. India had powerful communication equipment. Brazil offered their launch facilities. It was like watching the entire human race wake up and realize they were part of something bigger than their individual countries. Admiral Tom Bradley, a veteran who had served in 3 different wars, was chosen to lead this incredible mission. He was known for being calm under pressure and never giving up, no matter how bad things looked. As he stood in mission control, watching dozens of different types of spacecraft being hastily prepared for launch, he could hardly believe what he was seeing. Captain Beth Morgan, one of Bradley's most trusted officers, stood beside him looking out at the growing fleet in orbit. The ships were a strange mixture of military vessels, research craft, and converted cargo haulers. Some were painted in different national colors, others bore the logos of private space companies. None of them had been designed for interstellar travel, but human engineers were working around the clock to modify them. "Admiral," Morgan said quietly, "are we really going to try this? Most of these ships have never been farther than the moon. We're talking about traveling to another star system to fight an enemy we know nothing about." Bradley watched as another converted cargo ship joined the formation above Earth. The crews volunteering for this mission knew they probably wouldn't come home. They were signing up anyway. "Beth," he said, his voice steady and determined, "someone out there called for help. They're facing extinction, and they reached out to us across the galaxy. We're human beings. When people are in trouble, we don't walk away. We show up." The human fleet suddenly appeared in the Zelari star system after traveling faster than light for 3 weeks. What they saw when they arrived was like looking into hell itself. Captain Dan Cooper stood on the bridge of his ship, the USS Defiance, staring out at a scene that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Thousands of Kitora bioships filled the space around the last Zelari world. These weren't normal spacecraft made of metal and circuits. They were alive, breathing creatures the size of city blocks that pulsed and writhed as they moved through space. Their surfaces were covered in what looked like veins carrying stolen energy from the planets they had consumed. Some were shaped like giant insects, others looked like enormous jellyfish floating through the void. "My God," Cooper whispered, his voice barely audible. "There's so many of them. How are we supposed to fight all of that?" His communications officer turned to him with wide eyes. "Sir, our sensors are showing over 3,000 enemy contacts. Some of them are bigger than our largest aircraft carriers." Before Cooper could respond, Admiral Bradley's voice crackled over the radio from the flagship. Despite the overwhelming odds they faced, his voice was steady and calm. "All ships, this is Admiral Bradley. I know what you're all seeing out there looks impossible, but we didn't travel across the galaxy to turn around and go home. We came here to save people. So let's get to work and show these things what humans can do." The first battle began immediately. The Cathora bioships turned toward the human fleet and unleashed weapons that had destroyed every other civilization they had encountered. Streams of acid that could eat through the strongest metals shot toward the human ships. Energy beams designed to drain power from enemy vessels locked onto their targets. But something strange happened. The weapons that had easily destroyed the most advanced ships in the galaxy barely damaged the crude, bulky vessels that humans had thrown together in just a few weeks. The Cathora acid weapons hit the human ships and fizzled out against armor plating that had been designed to survive meteor impacts and solar radiation. The energy drains that should have shut down their power systems couldn't overcome the massive backup generators and redundant systems that human engineers always built into their spacecraft. "What the hell?" muttered Chief Engineer Rodriguez from the engine room of the Defiance. "Their weapons are hitting us, but our systems are barely registering any damage." Lieutenant Amy Foster was leading a team of Marines on one of the smaller human ships when Admiral Bradley gave the order. That shocked everyone. "All boarding teams, prepare to assault the enemy vessels. We're going inside these things." Foster's Marines looked at each other with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. They had trained for this moment, but boarding an alien bioship was something no human had ever done before. "You heard the Admiral," Foster said, checking her weapon and life support systems. "We're going aboard one of those things. Remember your training and watch each other's backs." The boarding craft launched from the human ships and punched through the organic hulls of the Kithra vessels. Foster and her team found themselves inside corridors that looked more like the inside of a giant animal than a spacecraft. The walls were slimy and pulsed with a heartbeat-like rhythm. Strange lights flickered along what might have been nerve pathways. The Cathora had psychological weapons designed to drive their enemies insane with fear. They released chemicals that were supposed to cause panic attacks and hallucinations. The corridors themselves seemed to shift and change, trying to confuse intruders and make them lose their way. But Foster's Marines had trained in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. They had practiced underwater in crushing ocean depths, where one mistake meant death. They had climbed frozen mountains where the air was so thin they could barely breathe. They had fought in deserts where the heat could kill a person in minutes. "Ma'am," Sergeant Paul Anderson reported over the radio as his team advanced through a pulsing tunnel. "I have to say, this isn't nearly as scary as that training exercise we did in the Mariana Trench last year. At least these corridors aren't trying to crush us with water pressure." The Cathora couldn't understand what was happening. For millions of years, they had conquered other species by making them afraid. Every other civilization had surrendered or fled when faced with their terrifying bioships and mind-breaking weapons. But humans were different. They had evolved on a planet where everything was trying to kill them. Deadly storms, poisonous animals, crushing ocean depths, freezing mountain peaks, and burning deserts had shaped them into something the galaxy had never seen before. When the Cathora tried to scare them, the humans just got angry. When they wounded human soldiers, instead of retreating, the humans fought even harder. These strange creatures from the Death World didn't just refuse to be intimidated, they seemed to actually enjoy the challenge. The real turning point in the battle came when Colonel Steve Mitchell and his Special Forces team managed to break into the heart of the largest Kythera bioship. This massive creature was like the brain of their entire operation, controlling hundreds of smaller ships around it. Mitchell's team had fought their way through corridors filled with deadly traps and biological weapons that should have killed them within minutes. But as they moved deeper into the alien vessel, something incredible became clear. The weapons that had wiped out entire civilizations across the galaxy were barely affecting the humans at all. Dr. Karen Hayes was monitoring the team's health from the medical bay aboard the human flagship. She watched her screens in amazement as she saw the readings from Mitchell's strike team. "Admiral Bradley," she called over the communication system. "You need to hear this. The Kythera biotoxins that are supposed to shut down our nervous systems aren't working. Our immune systems are treating them like we just caught a cold." Captain Rob Turner, who was coordinating the assault from his command ship, couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Doc, are you telling me that their most deadly weapons are basically useless against us?" Hayes pulled up more data on her computer. "It's incredible, sir. These aliens have been using the same biological weapons for millions of years because they work on every species they've ever encountered. But humans evolved on Earth, where we had to survive diseases, poisonous plants, venomous animals, and all kinds of biological threats. Our immune systems are like tanks compared to what other species have." The doctor paused, looking at another set of readings. "And those fear chemicals they're pumping into the air, the ones that are supposed to make us panic and run away, our soldiers are barely noticing them." One of Mitchell's men just reported that the scary atmosphere reminds him of camping in bear country back home. As the human assault continued, something unprecedented began happening. The Kythera, who had been the terror of the galaxy for countless generations, started to feel afraid for the first time in their species' history. They had always been the hunters, never the prey. But these strange creatures from the Death World were fighting like nothing they had ever seen. When Kythera warriors wounded human soldiers, instead of retreating in pain, the humans seemed to get angrier and fight even harder. When their bioships released clouds of toxic gas, the humans just put on breathing masks and kept attacking. When they tried to overwhelm human positions with superior numbers, the humans used tactics that seemed completely insane but somehow worked. Commander Joe Parker was captain of a human destroyer called the Freedom. When he saw that his ship was badly damaged and couldn't escape, he made a decision that showed the Kythera something they had never experienced before. Instead of surrendering or trying to run away, he aimed his crippled ship directly at the largest enemy biocruiser in the area. "All hands," Parker announced to his crew over the ship's intercom. "We're going to ram that big ugly thing and take it down with us. It's been an honor serving with all of you." As the Freedom accelerated toward the massive Kythera vessel, Parker's crew began singing the Star-Spangled Banner over the communications channel. Other human ships could hear them, and soon dozens of other crews were singing along as they watched Parker's destroyer crash into the enemy ship. The impact was devastating. Parker's small destroyer was completely destroyed, but it hit the biocruiser so hard that the massive alien vessel split in half. The explosion was so powerful that it took out 2 more Kythera ships that were nearby. Down on the planet's surface, Major Kate Sullivan had been studying pieces of destroyed Kythera bioships with her engineering team. What they discovered changed the entire battle. Admiral Bradley Sullivan's voice came over the radio. "We've figured out why our weapons are working so well against them. These bioships can heal themselves when they get damaged, but they can't handle being hit over and over again with physical impacts. Their living armor can regenerate from energy weapons, but when we hit them with solid projectiles repeatedly, they can't heal fast enough." Admiral Bradley immediately understood what this meant. "All ships, this is the Admiral. Switch all weapons." 2 kinetic rounds. That means bullets, missiles, and anything else that hits them physically. Stop using energy weapons and start hitting these things with good old-fashioned firepower. The change in tactics was immediate and devastating. Human ships began firing streams of metal projectiles at the Cthulhu. The aliens watched in horror as their vessels, which had seemed invincible for millions of years, began falling apart under the constant physical bombardment. The Cthulhu had conquered the galaxy using fear, biological weapons, and their ability to regenerate from damage. But they had never faced an enemy that came from a world so dangerous that it had turned its inhabitants into the ultimate survivors. The final battle was about to begin, and it looked impossible. The Cthulhu had called in every single bioship they had across multiple star systems. The space around the last Zelari world was now filled with thousands upon thousands of living alien vessels, all converging on the small human fleet and the Zelari evacuation ships trying to escape. Admiral Bradley stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the massive enemy force approaching. His fleet had already lost nearly half their ships in the previous battles. The remaining human vessels were damaged, running low on ammunition, and facing odds that no military commander in history had ever seen. His communications officer turned to him with a grim expression. "Sir, our long-range sensors show the Cthulhu are bringing everything they have. We're looking at over 10,000 enemy contacts, including some bioships that are larger than anything we've seen before." Bradley could have ordered a retreat. Any reasonable military leader would have pulled back, saved the ships they still had, and tried to evacuate as many Zelari civilians as possible. But as he watched the refugee transports struggling to load the last survivors from the planet below, he made a decision that would be remembered across the galaxy for thousands of years. "All ships, this is Admiral Bradley." His voice rang out across every human vessel in the fleet. "I want every combat ship to form a defensive wall around those civilian transports. We didn't travel across the galaxy just to watch innocent people die. We're going to hold this line." Captain Bill Reynolds was commanding the heavy cruiser Liberty, one of the largest ships in the human fleet. Without hesitation, he maneuvered his vessel directly between the approaching Cthulhu swarm and the helpless Zelari evacuation ships. "Roger that, Admiral. The Liberty is in position and ready to fight." All across the human fleet, similar scenes played out. Captain after captain moved their damaged ships into defensive positions, knowing they were probably about to die, but not one of them complained or asked to retreat. The Cthulhu expected the humans to run or try to negotiate for their lives, just like every other species had done. Instead, the humans did something that shocked the alien swarm to its core. They attacked first. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Commander Lisa Brooks, who was in charge of the tactical systems on one of the human destroyers, made a discovery that changed everything. She noticed that when multiple human ships focused their fire on the same Cthulhu bioship, the alien vessel couldn't heal itself fast enough to survive. "All ships," Brooks broadcast across the fleet, "concentrate your fire. Pick one target and hit it with everything you have. Don't spread your shots around. Focus fire and take them down one at a time." The tactical information spread through the human fleet in seconds. Suddenly, every human ship was working together like parts of a single massive weapon. They would pick one Cthulhu bioship, hit it with concentrated fire from dozens of vessels, and watch it die before moving on to the next target. The battle went on for hours. Human ships were destroyed one by one, but each time a human vessel died, it took multiple Cthulhu bioships with it. The humans fought with a fury and determination that the aliens had never encountered. When their ships were crippled, human crews would ram them into enemy vessels. When they ran out of ammunition, they used their ships as weapons. Captain Rodriguez was commanding a small frigate called the Courage, when his ship took a direct hit that knocked out his engines and weapons. Instead of abandoning ship, he ordered his crew to overload the reactor and aimed the dying vessel at the largest Kithora bioship in the area. "Tell my family I died fighting for something that mattered," Rodriguez said over the radio as his ship exploded, taking the massive enemy vessel with it. As the battle continued, something incredible happened. The Kithora, who had been the terror of the galaxy for millions of years, began to retreat. These creatures that had never known fear in their entire existence were running away from the small, human fleet. The humans had lost over 70% of their ships, but they had completely broken the Kithora swarm. The surviving alien bioships fled toward the edge of the galaxy, too traumatized and afraid to ever return to this region of space. When the fighting finally ended, Commander Veltar contacted the human flagship. The Zalari leader's voice was filled with wonder and confusion. "Admiral Bradley, I must ask you something. Why did you come here? Why did your people risk everything to save us? We are complete strangers to you. We have nothing to offer in return." Admiral Bradley looked around his damaged bridge. His uniform was torn, his ship was barely holding together, and he had just lost thousands of brave men and women. But when he smiled, it was with genuine warmth. "Commander Viltar," Bradley said simply, "you sent out a call for help. You told the galaxy that your people were dying and needed someone to stand with you. We're human beings. When people are in trouble and ask for help, we don't walk away. We show up. That's just who we are." The galaxy would never be the same. Word spread quickly about the small blue planet whose people had traveled across the stars to save strangers and had broken the most feared enemy in known space. From that day forward, no one would ever again dismiss Earth as just another death world.